So, hello again and welcome to module number 6 of the WP Owners Club. Today we're going to look at the WordPress maintenance, or the tasks that we need to keep our site up to date and running correctly. Let's have a look at the agenda for today's session. We're going to look at why we need to maintain WordPress, why there are so many updates that you need to apply on across a number of different systems. We're going to look at the maintenance tasks that we need to undertake. And I'm going to take you through a process that I use to ensure that every update you do is correct and works smoothly. So that's the maintenance process I'll take you through. Next, I'm going to take you through backup and recovery. This is probably the most important part of this module. I'm going to teach you how to take a proper backup and how to recover that backup if any of your maintenance tasks cause an issue on your site. After that, I'll move on to the demonstration. We're going to take some backups. There's various ways to take a WordPress backup, so I'll take you through those different types of backups, and I'm going to do a restore as well, which is very important. Then we'll move on to updating various parts of a WordPress site that I've set up. After that, we'll move back to a question and answer session. Estimated time for this particular module, 50 to 60 minutes. Let's move on. So, why do I need to keep maintaining my WordPress site? Why can't I build it and just leave it? You need to keep on top of the maintenance of a WordPress site because WordPress is so dynamic. It's constantly updated. It's a work in progress. People are developing and adding to and changing the code of a WordPress all the time. They'll bring out bug fixes, so if somebody reports a problem with WordPress, the core development team will develop a bug fix which needs to be released and installed into your environment. They also do a lot of security updates. WordPress is an incredibly popular piece of software. It's estimated that 13% of the websites on the internet use WordPress. So that's how widespread and popular it is. And lots of hackers are going after the vulnerabilities in WordPress because it's so popular. That means they'll be able to get into more sites and perform more mischief. So there are constant security updates released to us, so we need to patch our sites and keep the hackers at bay. And last, and of course not least, WordPress is a work in progress, so there's going to be new functionality added to and released all the time. So there's three main areas that require our maintenance efforts. The first is the WordPress core files. The next are the plugins we add, and lastly the themes that we install into our WordPress site. So I've said you need to update your core WordPress files. WordPress has a development path, so every 3 months they'll release a new version of the core functionality that's been updated. They'll also release a lot of interim fixes with bug fixes, security patches and what have you. We also have to look at our plugin files. As WordPress core changes, so the plugins have to change to meet any new specifications in the core WordPress files. So they're in a constant state of flux and they need updating all the time as well. And the last part, themes. This is a much lesser extent. Your themes are more static than your plugins and your core WordPress files. You'll find that you don't need to update them as often, but sometimes your theme will need to be changed to match new WordPress functionality or new WordPress functions. So you'll find you need to maintain that as well. How do we know we need to do a maintenance task? Well, luckily the WordPress dashboard will tell us. There's a little update box in the dashboard, which we'll see when we get to the demonstration, that tells us exactly which pieces of code are out of date. If it's the core WordPress file, you also see there's a banner along the top of your site that says you need to update WordPress. The actual update process now has been very much simplified in WordPress 3.x. All the updates are done inside your dashboard and are a pretty simple process. In earlier versions of WordPress, you had to download files, unpack them, and upload them to your system. Now it's very much simplified. There's an update panel where we do all that work inside of WordPress. So how often should we expect WordPress updates? As I said, there's planned development every 3 to 6 months WordPress will release a new version, and that's for the new functionality or the changes to the system. But there'll also be these interim bug fixes and security patches, and they'll come out more rapidly. So for example, WordPress 3.1 came out and there was a security flaw was found, and a couple of weeks later there was this interim bug fix to take us up to 3.1.1. So main updates 3 to 6 months, interim fixes on demand. So you'll find you're doing maintenance tasks fairly frequently. So the next question is, how often should you update your site? I recommend you update your WordPress core as a new version is released. The majority of the interim fixes are security fixes, so I recommend you get your site up to date and secured as fast as possible. The caveat that I'll add to that is that you should check your core plugins for compatibility with that new version. So for example, if you are running an e-commerce WordPress plugin and that's central to your business, you don't want to upgrade to the new version of WordPress until you're sure that that core plugin works with the new version. So here's my maintenance process. This is the way I do all my updates on my own sites and on my client sites. I found this is the best way to do the upgrades and to avoid any downtime and any problems. So starting at the top, take a backup. It amazes me how many people don't back up their WordPress site regularly, and I'm going to take you through exactly how to do a backup in the demonstration soon. But first step, take a backup and take an archive of that information and keep it off your site. Next, disable all of your plugins. I say this because there are sometimes clashes between WordPress core updates and plugins if they aren't at the right level. So the first thing we do, disable all the plugins, then we move down, we update the WordPress core files, update any plugins that are out of date, update the theme. We don't need to do theme updates that often, but sometimes you will see that you need to update your theme. I've said in the brackets there, you need to retain your updates. What I mean by that is if you have made any changes to your theme, perhaps you've edited some files and added some plugins, that kind of thing, those updates will not be reflected in the new version of the theme. So you need to be aware of that, and you'll have to manually update the theme when you put it back in, the updated theme. So just to reiterate, we've backed up, we've disabled all the plugins, we've updated the WordPress core files, we've updated any out-of-date plugins, we've updated the themes, then we reactivate our plugins, test the system thoroughly, and if all is okay, that's it. That's your update process done. If not, roll it back. What I mean by roll back, take the backup that you've made at the start of that process, restore the database, restore any files that you backed up. We'll be doing this in the demonstration. I'll take you through that process in detail. So I want to move on to backing up WordPress now. A lot of people are not backing up their WordPress sites or not backing up all of what needs to be backed up. So there's two things that need to be backed up. The first is the database. Inside the database you'll have all of your posts, your pages, your comments, and all your dynamic data that's held in your site. That's held in the backend database. The other thing you need to back up is a directory called wp-content. On your WordPress site there is a directory, and inside of that you'll find all your theme files, your plugin files, your uploaded content. So if you add any images or video or podcasts to your site, they all be held in wp-content. This is a dynamic directory, so that needs to be backed up and kept secure so your site can be recovered in the event of a failure. Two ways to do a backup. You can do it manually, or you can use plugins to do it. I'm going to take you through the manual process just so you have a really good understanding of what needs to be backed up. Then I'll show you a number of plugins that can do that job for you. So a manual backup. To manually back up the database, we need to go into our hosting system So I use Bluehost, so I'm going to take you through logging into the back end of that and using a tool called PHP MyAdmin. What that is a database management tool. It's like a GUI management tool, and inside of there there'll be a tool to export your database. So that's what that'll do is create a file we can download onto our local machine, which will contain the entire contents of our database. And to manually back up the wp-content directory, we're going to use a process called FTP. We're going to connect to our site using an FTP client, and then I'm going to show you how to copy all of the files manually onto a local machine. Next, we're going to look at some plugins to back up our WordPress database. The plugin I like to use to back up a database is called wp-db-backup. Now, what's so good about this plugin is it allows you to do an on-demand backup. So say you're going to do an upgrade and you want an on-demand backup, you can go in and create a backup there and then. But it also allows you to set a schedule. So what you could do is you could set up an automated backup that will take a copy of your database every day and send it to you automatically as an email attachment. If you're anything like me, if you don't automate repetitive tasks like this, you'll forget them, or you'll find something more important to do and the backups won't get done. And it's the key time when you need to recover your archive, you'll find that you haven't been taking a backup for a couple of weeks and your site will be out of date, and it'll take a lot more effort to get your site back online properly. The other backup plugin I recommend is called WordPress Backup. I'll put links to all of these plugins in the members area. WordPress Backup takes a copy of your wp-content directory. So that means with the combination of those two free plugins, you can back up both your database and your wp-content directory. Just a note on another plugin, which is one I personally use to do my own backups. It's something called Backup Buddy. It's not for everyone, it's a premium plugin. I think it costs about $40, I think it was. But I highly recommend that. What it does is it backs up the database and the file system, or the wp-content directory, in one go. So you don't have to have two processes running. It combines it all. And we can also schedule and save offsite copies of that. I'll show you Backup Buddy in the demonstration, which is now. So in our demonstration, we're going to do some backups. We're going to do some manual backups, and we're going to take you through using those plugins I recommend. Then we're going to go into the actual maintenance process. I've built a demonstration site which has got an out-of-date version of WordPress, so I can take you through updating WordPress core. It's got a number of plugins that are out of date, and I've found a theme that needs to be updated as well. So I can take you through updating all three of those different layers. Let's go over to my WordPress site. So as usual, we're going to use dev.wpdude.com. Let's just log into the back end. As you can see, along the top, it's telling us that WordPress 3.1.1 is available. If you want to know what current version we've got installed on our site, if we go to this dashboard widget, and it'll see us there, you're using WordPress version 3.1. If you want to know exactly what your update is for, you can click on this link here, and that'll take you to the WordPress site, and it gives you a summary of the update there. The red flag immediately to me is it says it's a security hardening update. Whenever I see that there's a security loophole that has been found, I will always apply that particular fix as soon as I can. Going back to what I said earlier, if you've got a key business critical plugin that you're not sure is compatible with the latest version, check with the plugin author and don't apply the update until they've tested and verified that that plugin will work with the new version. So going back to our site, we know that there's a WordPress core update to be applied. We've also got some other updates here. It says there we've got 3 updates. Let's click into there and see what needs to be updated. So the three updates are WordPress Core, and we've got two plugins here, Contact Form 7 and WordPress Importer. They're both out of date, so they need to be upgraded too. Going back to my process, we need to back up, disable all plugins, update the core, update plugins, update themes if it needs to. No themes need to be updated. As you can see there, our themes are up to date, and then re-enable those plugins. So let's go through the backup process. First thing I'm going to do is manually back up both my database and my WP-contents directory. To back up my database, I need to go to my hosting company, which is Bluehost, and I'm going to run this tool here, PHP MyAdmin. Each hosting company is going to have this in a slightly different place, but the majority of them will have this tool available for you to use. So consult their documentation, speak with technical support, find out how you can access PHP MyAdmin. When we open it up, what it looks like is this. A bit intimidating if you're not used to working with databases, but we're only interested in two small parts, and that is the export and the imports function. So let's do an export. What we need to do from the export, select all the tables, click on Save as File, and click on Go. So what that's going to do is going to create a file, an SQL file, a standard query language file, which contains a series of commands that will allow us to rebuild your database. I don't know if you can see it there in the bottom left hand corner. It's busy downloading my database as we speak. There, that's done. If I open up that file, take just 2 seconds to open that up. It's quite a big file, so it's taking a little time to open up. There we have. It's just a series of commands that will go through and rebuild our database. Looks like gobbledygook, but all you need to know is you run an export, and that creates a file that saves all of your database information locally on your system. So that's your database secured. Now, the next point is to connect to your sites using FTP and back up your WP-content directory. So I'm using something called FileZilla. Essentially put in your host name, username and password, which will be available from your hosting company, and that connects to your site. So if I go to my dev site, which is down here, so here's my WordPress installation. What we are most interested in is the WP-content directory. Inside of there, you'll find that we have our uploads, which is where any images or videos that you add to your site are held. We've got our themes directory, so that's where our theme files are held, and lastly our plugins. So this is a dynamic directory. New things are added to it all the time, and we need to back that up to have a full copy. You could just back up WP-content, but we might as well select everything and then download it. Depending on how much you've got uploaded into your site, this can take anywhere from 10 minutes to a couple of hours. So I'll just leave that running and let it get on with itself. So that was how to manually back up a system. Hope you understand. We've got two different components. We've got the database, which contains our dynamic data, and we've got our WP-content directory, which contains files that we've uploaded into our site. We can do both those processes with plugins, as I said. The two I like to use are WordPress Backup and WP-DB Backup or WordPress Database Backup. Let's activate both those and I'll take you through using those two plugins. Once they're installed, you'll find that you've got two new options. Under Tools, we've got a Backup, which is the database backup, and under Settings, we've got WordPress Backup. A bit confusing, they're in different places, but you need to do both these processes to ensure you've got a full backup. So let's do the database first. We click on Backup. And it takes us to our database backup tool. Let me just scroll down first of all. We've got two options. As I said, we can do an on-demand backup. So we can save it to a server, download it, or email it to ourselves by clicking Backup Now. Or we can set a schedule. Let's do an on-demand backup. It automatically backs up our default tables. If you've got any extensions such as plugins, you'll find that you have additional tables to select over here. I'll not do them all. I'll just select some and then click on Backup. So that goes off, begins to back up your tables, and once this reaches 100%, it will create a file that we can then download to our local machine and keep an off-site backup of our site. It's important to keep your backups away from your actual WordPress install, just in case your backups are accidentally deleted or become corrupt on your site. So an off-site backup is always better than having an on-site backup. So you can see it's downloaded there and we have a copy of our database. Moving down, we can also schedule our backup, which is a really good practice. We could set perhaps a once daily. Again, select all our tables. And what that'll do, it'll take a backup and send it via email to this address here. So click on schedule and that's that job done. So you'll get a daily archive sent to you via email, which you could then just save off somewhere on your local machine, safe in the knowledge that you have a secure backup of your site. So that was for the database only. If we look at the file system under Settings, WordPress Backup, we have this WordPress Backup plugin. Unfortunately, it doesn't give us an on-demand option like the other plugin, but what it does, it lets us set up a daily archive job. We can set 1 day, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week. That's a daily backup. And what that'll do is that'll back up the uploads directory, the theme directory, and the plugins directory, and send a copy of that archive to us via email. There we have it. Simple as that. It's now sending automatic backups to us daily. This is not only important for maintenance, it's also important for day-to-day management of your system. So if you accidentally delete a large part of your data, or if there's a corruption on your hosting system, or if you're hacked, or any other failure that might have happened, if you've got a backup of those two items, you can rebuild your site very easily. So now to move on to restoring, it's not as easy to restore as it is to perform those plugin backups. What you need to do is take a copy of your archive. I'm talking about the database here. Go back into PHP MyAdmin and go to the import option. Using this tool here, you browse to the file that you previously saved, select it, and click on Go. So what that'll do is that'll replay that file and restore your database. I'll not run it here because we haven't got a complete backup, but it's the reverse process. So run the import, choose the file, click on Go, and your database will be rebuilt. The same goes with the file system download. You would unpack the file that's saved, go to FTP, select the files and copy them back the other way. This is still busy doing the download, so I can't show you the upload process. But it's basically the reverse of what we did. So you select it from here, click on upload to take it to this side. One more backup plugin that I really do recommend, this is one I use on my own sites, is Backup Buddy. What's so great about Backup Buddy is it does both those jobs, the database and the file system, in one backup. So if we go to here and click on Backup, you can see that we've got the option for a full backup or a database only backup. I'll just run a quick full backup. It's going to take a little bit of time, I think. Let's just leave that running. The benefit of Backup Buddy is that it has scheduling just like the other two, but it also allows you to automatically save those backups off-site. So you could FTP that file automatically to a file store, you could send it via email, you could also send it to Amazon S3. Amazon S3 is a storage facility supplied by Amazon, the online retailers, and you can just copy your files into S3. But it also has a script, as you can see here, called Import Buddy. So if you run Import Buddy and just point it to your archive, it will automatically rebuild your entire site very, very quickly. So there's none of this manual uploading and restoring of files. There it is. That's gone off, and that's created a full backup of my site, which I could then click on here and download it and save it off site. So that's Backup Buddy. So we've got a full backup. Let's turn our attention to do some upgrades now. I'll just go over my process again. I'll keep hammering on about this, but take your backup, disable all your plugins, update core, update plugins, update themes. So we've taken our backup, let's disable all of our plugins. I recommend disabling all your plugins because sometimes the code of a plugin isn't in line with the updated WordPress updated WordPress core files that you're about to install, and if it's still active and it tries to call something that's been changed, it'll cause an error and it can sometimes crash your site. So let's just deactivate all of those plugins. There we have all of them are inactive, and let's go back to our update. So we're going to do the automatic update. So click on that button, and what's happening now is it's going off to the WordPress file repository, getting a copy of the updated core code, unpacking it on your site, installing it into your site, upgrading your database, and updating your system. It took me longer to say than it did to actually do the upgrade there. You saw it do it fairly quickly. So that's the core updated. Now we need to do our plugins. Again, fairly similar. We can just select all our plugins, click on update, and again it's going off to the plugin repository on wordpress.org, downloading those files, unpacking them, updating them, and applying the updates. Again, it takes me longer to explain than it does for the actual process to work. This is a huge improvement over earlier versions of WordPress, where you'd have to select and download all of these files, manually FTP them up to your site, run update processes, and generally it took a lot longer than that. Just got a question coming from Tyler. He says, if you deactivate plugins, does that mean the site is down or not working at this time? It means that you'll lose any plugin functionality during that process. But just another point, when you're actually running the updates, WordPress puts your site into maintenance mode. So anybody who tries to access your site when you're running the updates, we'll see a message saying this site is currently under maintenance. If you're concerned or think the update's going to take a long time, you could install something called maintenance mode. That's another plugin. I'll send you a link to that in the members only area. That means you can put in your own message saying that you've taken your site down for scheduled maintenance. But as you saw, we're only going to be taking this site down for about 5-10 minutes max to go through this process. So just go back. We've updated the core, we've updated our plugins. If we go back now, you'll see that we're all up to date now. Our theme is already okay, so are our plugins. So what we need to do now is reactivate the plugins that we deactivated. And there's a really handy tool in WordPress, and that is the recently active section. So you can know which ones we did have active, which are our backup ones. Select all those, activate them, click on apply. Let me just refresh that. Looks like it's timed out when it was reactivating those plugins. Yeah, so it's reactivated them correctly. The process now would be to then go and test your site. This is just a development site, so it's not very complex, so it hasn't got much content or anything, but everything looks to be working okay. You check things like sidebars, make sure the correct information was being displayed. If you had any specific plugins that were very important to your site, again going back to e-commerce type plugins or contact forms, give those a quick test, make sure everything's all okay, and that is your maintenance applied. Personally, I tend to do this about once a week. I'll check, it'll be the plugins that you find are updated the most, so you'll see whenever there's a little pop-up box with numbers in your plugins, go off and do your WordPress plugin updates, and of course whenever you see this banner along the top with a new version of WordPress available to you. I've also got a theme that needs to be updated. I'll take you through that. Let me just activate version 2.8. And there it is. We're getting a similar update to the WordPress core files telling us that our theme is out of date. Because this is a premium theme, it doesn't do the automatic update from this page here. But what we do is we follow the same process that we did for the WordPress core update and click on update. It's going to download the new theme files. Let me just log in. So it's downloaded those files onto my system, extracted them, made available, and then I click on activate to update that new version. And there we have it. Again, very simple, much easier than it used to be even just 12 months ago, where we had to download and upload everything manually. Everything's across the wire, and the update process is almost seamless for us now. Tyler's saying, if you update a theme, don't you lose the changes you made? Yes, you will. I think I touched on this earlier in the presentation. If you've edited individual files, those changes will not be reflected in the new version. But what's good about this is, if I show you, it's retained the old theme there. So there's 2.8, and 2.9 is also available to us. So we could roll back to the previous version and get the changes if we lose them. and saying, do you have to update files on each separate website that you have? Yes, you do. So if you've got multiple installs of WordPress, you have to do multiple maintenance jobs. If you find that if you have a lot of sites, you need to update them, you might want to look into something called WordPress multi-site. That allows you to host multiple WordPress installations from one set of WordPress files, so you only have to update once. So one more time, I'll talk about the process just so it's fired home. Do a backup, always do a backup. Disable all your plugins, update your WordPress core, update your plugins, update your themes, re-enable your plugins, and then test. If you have any problems, roll it back to the previous versions using the backup. And then if you find you're getting problems with the plugins, you can report those to your plugin developers. If it's a theme, your theme developer, or if it's a central WordPress core problem, report that to WordPress.org in the support forums. Let's go back to the presentation now. That's the end of the demo. So just a quick recap what we went through today. We talked about why we need to back up. WordPress is not a static product, it's constantly developed. There's bug fixes coming out all the time, there's security fixes. We need to apply these updates to our site fairly often. We looked at backup, how to take a backup, why it's so important, and I'll give you a demonstration of the backup process and the maintenance process. So that's the end of the presentation and demonstration. I'm just going to hand it over to you for any questions.